Welcome back to the Long War of the Chosen 1.2 class guides. Today we're looking at the technical, one of the classes that received one of the bigger overhauls in the most recent 1.2 patch. And so there's a lot of minor changes that affect the overall build. Well, not just minor. There's basically a whole lot of rework going on here in the middle row compared to the previous builds, and then there's also these fancy new things like EMP rockets that shake up the rocket build. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're going to start off with the one that's has received the least amount of changes, which would be the Flamer build. Where, in my opinion, the core perks here are, first of all, Napalm X. Napalm X gives your Flamethrower attacks a chance to panic enemies. And also, it has been buffed that enemies that are on fire take additional 1 dot damage, so you're more likely to kill enemies with the fire dot. Now, the Flamethrower by itself, I think the basic tier 1 Flamethrower has like a 60% chance to set enemies on fire. So let me go a step back. The main function of your Flamer technical is to control enemies, ideally on a concealment ambush, control a large group of enemies, but also sometimes you just want to control 1 or 2 important targets. Now, if you're only talking about a 60% chance to set an enemy on fire with your basic Flamer, that's not really great or reliable. You do have an additional chance, of course, to also set every tile that's in your attack area on fire, and if the enemy moves, they might move through a burning tile, set themselves on fire, but that's even less reliable, right? So you're relying on the tile fire chance plus the enemy exactly moving through that tile. You can increase your odds there a little bit by flanking the enemies, basically encouraging them to move, but you still you want something more, a little bit more reliable. Napalm X now gives you also the chance to panic them. Again, there's not a guarantee, not 100% by a long shot, but now you're basically stacking the odds in your favor. You know, you have the base fire chance, you have the tile fire chance, and now you have the panic chance. On top of that, the panic roll needs to be made by any enemy hit. It doesn't, even like an Andromedon that's immune to fire, will still roll for panic and will very often panic. So it's just a very, very strong upgrade to your basic Flamer attack, and that's why I consider it one of the core perks here. Then next core perk is Phosphorus. Flamefire attacks ignore fire immunities, so you can damage units that are immune to fire. You cannot set them on fire, they cannot burn, but you can damage them, and you shred a little bit of armor. Doesn't sound great, also isn't very great, but it's really just the other perks in the row don't really offer much for the Flamer technical at all, so you might as well pick up Phosphorus. The shred is a nice little extra, right? Especially like late game when all Advent units get 1 point of armor based on a armor dark event. You ambush a group of them, you shred them all. Congratulations, everybody has no armor again. So that's kind of nice to have, but this is really just, it only has a red box because the other ones don't do much for a Flamer technical, I think. The much bigger upgrade is Incinerator, giving you more range and a bigger AoE for your Flamethrower attack. This is a night and day difference. You're going to be able to much easier get your Flamethrowers in there. Cover a bigger area. It's much easier to set up a concealment ambush on enemies because you don't need to get super close anymore, and especially like on bigger missions like troop columns, supply raids, HQ assaults, you will fairly reliably be able to get that full Advent rainbow pot of 8 enemies, get them all in that Flamethrower AoE, and then your single soldier just controlled 8 enemies. Which, yeah, needless to say, is a really, really big advantage. And then to compound that, we have Quick Burn here, so we can use our Flamethrower as a free attack action by activating this. Now, Quick Burn got a little bit weaker because Firestorm can no longer be used with Quick Burn. The way Firestorm works is slightly differently. Previously, you would have to run into position and then press the Firestorm button and do a swirly Firestorm attack around you. Now it is a dashing move, so you need to have both your actions available, and then you click Firestorm and click on the tile where you want to end up at, and you do the Firestorm from there. So you can't move away after Firestorm with Quick Burn anymore. That's not possible. So something to keep in mind. Probably also one of the reasons why I decided to not put that necessarily as a core perk here. Anyway, Quick Burn, really good. The only downside really is that you're kind of often tempted to Quick Burn a group of enemies, and then, you know, out of 5 guys, 2 didn't catch fire, so you use another burn to get the other 2, and then you're kind of really getting low already on your Flamethrower charges. So one of the biggest downsides of the technical R variations is the limited ammo capacity of the secondary weapon. Anyway, let's look then at the rows that I don't consider core rows and what kind of choices we have over there. Now, when it comes to a corporal role, I think as a true flame attack, I would still strongly suggest Roust. It kind of used to be always, you know, what's the point of making an enemy move? They usually probably just move to a better position. But first of all, you have a chance to set them on fire. A lower chance than your basic Flamethrower attack, but still a chance. You have a chance to set tiles on fire, again, yada yada yada. If they run through it, they burn. A chance to panic with Napalm X, I think. Unless, hang on, let me just check the advanced tooltip. It doesn't say anything that Roust isn't affected, and I know this is not. Yeah. Anyway, so all the chances are actually listed in the advanced tooltips, and I know they're not really good to read when I still have the boxes open. Anyway, so chance to panic with Napalm X. And most importantly, we talked a little bit about this when discussing Flush. Rouse has also the effect on enemies that have reactions, most importantly the Chosen, that you can cancel their Chosen reaction because they're forced to do that move and reposition reaction. So similar utility like Flush against the Chosen, therefore really nice. But I think Concussion Rocket has it's nowhere near as terrible as it used to be in Long War 2, where Concussion Rocket was kind of just a meme, and you wonder who came up with that ability. No, it's a really solid thing now. It's basically a large area flashbang that does a little bit of damage and has also a chance of stunning enemies, with the big downside being that it relies on your rocket launcher accuracy. But it's a solid utility thing to have, so it's definitely a viable alternative. And then there's of course Formidable, you know, for some extra protection, some extra health. I think still the weakest choice of the ones, but I can see a point for it. For example, if you roll a really low health, like a 3 health soldier, or if you just wanna keep them alive a little bit more, and you feel like you don't need this kind of stuff. Maybe you have a special squad that never faces the Chosen anyway, or you can just, you know, whenever you face a Chosen, you say like, okay, I'll take a different technical than this one, since in Long War you always know when you will face a Chosen, and you can build your squad accordingly, and you should. Anyway, Sergeant rank. Choice between Shredder and Burnout. Burnout gives you smoke cover in the tile where you are using a Flamethrower attack. This can have negative implications, like it's not just affecting the tile you're standing in, but also the 8 tiles around it. So if you are standing right next to an enemy, there's a chance you give them smoke cover, which you usually don't want. But if you're aware that your soldier has burnout, then it's just a matter of your positioning, being aware of that, and maybe moving one tile further away before you fire your flamethrower. So it's a decent defensive perk, but it's also not always useful. You don't need it always. Shredder, I'm always a big fan of having more Shredder in my squad. More soldiers with Shredder gives you more options to just get rid of armor on high health enemies. So it's nice to have. The only downside here being usually for my Flamer technicals, I run them with a SMG, so that also already means their aim is not going to be fantastic. And for the majority of the campaign, I'm probably running them with a ballistic SMG, because their job is to get their flamethrower shots on targets and maybe fire their rocket at some point. They're not going to be a primary weapon attacker. And so the Shredder perk, of course, scales with weapon tech. Higher weapon tech means you shred more armor, so a ballistic SMG is only ever going to shred 1 point, which is kind of terrible. I guess the solution there is, if you pick Shredder on your technical, see if you can spare the change to upgrade the weapon. And then on the Master Sergeant row, there is the aforementioned Firestorm, this is for me kind of the fun pick, right? It's a very risky ability because you dash somewhere, you burn everything, you destroy a bunch of cover, and then you're stuck in that position. So ideally, you want to have a teamwork, a rescue protocol, or a command to get the soldier back to safety, which that's 3 very, very solid options. So there should be a way to get out of that. Helps a little bit if you have burnout, of course, because maybe you don't need to get to safety. Maybe you can actually just stay in that position. It grants you immunity to fire, so you're not going to burn yourself when you're doing this. It does have really strong cover destruction, so be aware when you choose your positioning. Don't necessarily position yourself next to a car. Ideally, if you can find some indestructible cover object that you can stand behind, then you might not need to be rescued by your team. But most of the time, you just want to target this where you hit the most amount of enemies. And then on the other end of the spectrum here, we have the Bunker Buster, which is a huge rocket AoE that has insane environmental damage and basically will destroy any and all cover in its area unless it's cover objects that are indestructible. Really great. The only downside, of course, is if you didn't pick any rocket talents for accuracy, aka fire in the hole, your accuracy with Bunker Buster might be lacking. Also, given the fact that usually when I promote a Flamer technical, I don't care about their aim stat, so a low aim technical might not get a super accurate Bunker Buster. But then again, Bunker Buster has a fairly decent AoE, so they don't need to land on target. It's like a horseshoe throwing, close enough, right? It's good enough. And finally, for all technicals, I guess, in a way, I'm going with a decisive officer, probably not. So there's this argument of technicals relying on the secondary weapon, and you have 2 flamer charges and 1 rocket, until you get exosuits. So you're gonna run out of things to do. So maybe having them trained as officers, so they can then pick up the slack and command others once they run out of rockets and flames, or maybe even before that, might not be terrible. But generally, I think having your shinobi or specialist officer there is probably more valuable. It's like if you don't have one of the other officers on a mission, then hey, having 1 or 2 officer ranks on your technical might not be the worst. But that is really then a question of, well, I don't have any missions, nobody's on officer training right now, I might as well throw a technical in for, you know, some edge case utility. Oh, hang on. Also, before we talked about officer, we were talking about master sergeant rank, and you know, I gotta take every opportunity to shit on Crusader's Rage when I get a chance. This is not gonna receive any boxes anytime soon on any of the specs here. I think a master sergeant perk that does absolutely nothing until you get injured just seems awful, terrible. Should never pick it. And shouldn't be here. That's my opinion on that. All right, let's move to the rocket technical. All right, rocket technical. A lot of things very similar, a lot of things vastly different. So we have, of course, as one of the core perks, fire in the hole. This makes your rockets more accurate and they deal more damage. Well, the more damage is really just a in 1.2, rocket damage in general was reduced, and then you get that lost damage back by picking fire in the hole. This is really to give a little bit more incentive to actually spec for the rockets, because of wanting that damage, because otherwise that damage without the +2, the damage of the rockets is kind of a little bit lackluster. When we're talking about more accurate, what does that actually mean? I have a separate video from several years back that explains in very long detail how rocket accuracy works. That video is mostly still accurate with one major difference, that it's in 1.2 rockets across the board have received a buff in accuracy. So by default, when you fire a rocket and you haven't moved, your character basically has to make 4 attack rolls with his aim stat, 4 aim rolls, and for every failed roll you get 1 tile of scatter. That was changed in 1.2 to only be 3 rolls. So you're already a little bit more likely to hit on target. Fire in the hole as a perk reduces the number of aim rolls you have to do in order to hit your target by 2. So at this point, if you haven't moved, it's a single roll. Technical rockets in 1.2 are really accurate. Like a single, like, at max 1 tile scatter is really great, and especially late game, once you get some additional aim, or maybe get some perks that boost your aim, or maybe have a lead by example officer that boosts your aim, you can really get close to pinpoint rocket accuracy, which just very nice. You can do some very precise cover destruction without hitting your own soldiers, without hitting civilians, VIPs, or anything else you don't want to hit. So fire and hole, core perk for that. Then over here, Javelin rockets, giving you rockets additional range. 6 tiles is a lot of additional range. Your accuracy suffers a little bit from that. Basically, you get a penalty a little bit to aim from further away, but it's, you know, especially fire in the hole, don't worry about it. You know, your max scatter is still just going to be 1 tile, unless, as long as you didn't move. And, you know, having 6 tiles more range means you probably don't have to move in the first place. And again, in this case, it's mirrored to what I talked earlier about phosphorus. It's just not worth picking up these 2 for rocket technical. So Javelin rockets is kind of an auto pick by that choice. Then here we have EMP rocket. It's a new perk that was added in 1.2. Similar to an EMP grenade, but it has a guaranteed shutdown for 2 actions on all robotic units that it hits. So really strong mechanical control. You can of course also just use it on a single target. It's a little bit, you know, the AoE isn't fantastic. Let me actually just turn this off a second while I load in the tooltip. 5 tile AoE diameter. It's not huge, but it's decent enough. You can, I'm thinking about especially like landed UFO assaults. You often have full-on groups of 8 mechs in those. If you can activate on them from outside of their vision range, because of course you picked up Javelin, then you can get a bunch of stunts in there. So that would be kind of nice. And again, pretty much the other perks don't really add all that much to Rocket Technical. Unless you're going, I mean, there isn't a weird argument for some sort of hybrid build that then picks up Incinerator Quick Burn down here to still have a good AoE on their Flamethrower, but then picks up all the other rocket perks. I haven't really played around with a Rocket Technical in 1.2, so I can't really comment that, but I think I would rather stick to these kind of... This is just too good to not pick, in my opinion. Also, it really helps late game. When we're talking about the sharpshooter, I always stressed how important disabling shot is. Well, here's your disabling shot, limited to sector port and gatekeepers. But it's an additional disabling shot for your team if you need it in these kind of missions. And then the previously mentioned Bunker Buster, now with increased accuracy. I'm fairly certain Javelin Rocket's range does not apply to the Bunker Buster rocket, or it didn't in the past at least. So keep that in mind, but yeah, pinpoint accuracy, cover destruction, what's not to love? And, you know, there's really no alternatives in the row anyway. Now, when we're flexing here on the talents, I still think you probably want concussion rockets. Again, now with more accuracy, you can get the targets disoriented that you really want to disorient. But I can't deny the utility of Roust, especially against Chosen. So that is potentially an alternative to give you just some additional tools in your box. On the Sergeant row, there's Biggest Booms. Now, Biggest Booms is one of my favorite perks on the Grenadier, for it really unlocks their additional damage potential. For me, the Rocket Technical always has been more like a utility soldier, where I think you would fire rockets more for cover destruction and maybe the shredding effect, and you don't really care all that much about the pure damage numbers. So having 1.5 extra damage on each target doesn't really make a difference, in my opinion. So I was kind of never really a big fan of Biggest Booms. Unless you have some XCOM row perks, bring them on to contribute to that and actually unlock some more crit damage potential. So, in my opinion, Shredder is the stronger perk for a Rocket Technical. Now, also keeping in mind that usually when deciding whether I want to build a rocket or a Flamer Technical, higher aim is for me like the factor where I'm saying, okay, I'm more likely to build a Rocket Technical, because of the rocket attacks are all aim based, so you need the aim stats. And then if your mobility allows this, like that, this soldier here, this randomly generated soldier, 72 aim at squaddy and 15 base mobility, which is a default, would, in my opinion, be an excellent Rocket Technical candidate. Where I would then probably take Shredder, run them with a rifle, and then they can help shred some targets when they're not firing rockets. Gunnery Sergeant row. Salvo versus Implacable. Salvo is kind of... You have one rocket, and being able to take a second action after launching a rocket is nice. You have one rocket. That's, you know, a perk that affects you once per mission. Well, I guess you have a second rocket, a third rocket, a fourth rocket, and maybe with an exosuit, a fifth rocket. And then, you know, if you have all these other perks, and maybe you could even have the Shredder Rocket XCOM row perk, suddenly you have 6 rockets. It's also Shock and Awe, I think. Gives you another rocket. You could have 7 rockets. At that point, Salvo becomes probably the preferred choice here. Otherwise, since you also, you know, early game especially, well, I guess Gunnery Sergeant is not early game. But anyway, before you have exosuits on everyone, you might just have one rocket plus its special rockets. So you're going to be shooting more often and hopefully getting kills, and then Implacable gives you some additional mobility and utility for repositioning. It's, I'm not saying, I'm not sure which would be my preferred choice. I just think Salvo can be a little bit lackluster, but it also, pays off if you actually pick up all the other perks for the bonus rockets. So the more rockets you have, the better Salvo becomes. Alright, and then let's take a look at, I don't even know, the hybrid, the rapid fire technical. With rapid fire here in the Landscorpion row, it opens up, I guess, the Shooty technical. Let's see. Alright, Shooty technical. So this is something that's completely new to 1.2. Where this middle row was kind of reworked. I think the core perk here being, of course, rapid fire, which when I initially saw the new build, I thought this is nuts, getting rapid fire this early on a soldier on Lance Corporal. Your assault will have to wait a long time at your ranger also to get rapid fire. You have somebody who gets this early. This gotta be super strong. Now, in the previous campaign, we built one Shooty rapid fire technical, and it didn't quite click for me. Now, this could have been a playstyle thing. It could have been maybe not the perfect build to take advantage of that. Maybe the soldier stats. Maybe I just got unlucky and that soldier got injured a little bit too often, fell behind in ranks, etc. So I'm not 100% sold on it, but I've heard so many good things from people that are playing with this about it that I trust that this is a solid build, and so that's why we're going to include it here. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind with this. You have, as a technical, 3 primary weapons to choose from: the SMG, the assault rifle, and the shotgun. And I think each of those are even options for our rapid fire technical. So you can play them a little bit assaulty with a shotgun to take advantage, of the early rapid fire. That's a lot of damage output. You're gonna need good mobility for that. Maybe some XCOM row perks can help with this, but this is a lot of damage potential, especially early on. Then, of course, rifle is kind of the more obvious choice. You're kind of a ranger who can only rapid fire, who doesn't get light 'em up, marauder, whatever it's called nowadays. So, but still, double shots, fairly good. And then you can kind of play a little bit more of I would say, with an SMG that's more than a kind of a flamer technical hybrid. So you take the SMG for the increased mobility, and for the reduced detection radius, so you can get closer to enemies while concealed and do Flamethrower ambush. Then in the turns when you're out of flamer or you don't want to use your flamer, you can still deliver some decent enough damage with the SMG, assuming you can get close enough. That being said, if you have rapid fire, you're going to be shooting very often, so might as well make all of these shots shred, might as well make all of these shots do an extra point of damage. So that's why this is kind of, in my opinion, the core that you want to work around with your shooting rapid fire technical. And of course, we're back to a definite no on the officer question, because, unlike the other, probably not, where it was like, yeah, if you don't want to use my rockets and my flames, I can be using officer abilities. Here it's a thing of, if I don't want to be using my rockets and flames, I'm going to be shooting. Don't have time for officer shenanigans. Alright, lots of blue boxes here. And hang on, somebody forgot something. Alright. Forgot the box on quick burn. Anyway, so it looks like a lot of choice, but I think it's more a what kind of rapid fire technical do you want to be? Do you want to be rapid fire with a dash of flamer? Then you probably pick up Roused, Incinerator, quick burn, and potentially finish it up with Firestorm. So you have some additional flamer options whenever you're not shooting with a primal weapon. Or you could go for the dash of rocket stuff, where you pick up, you know, concussion rocket. Well, I mean, this is still a utility pick here, so both could work. But yeah, concussion rocket, EMP, salvo, so you can fire a rocket and then still rapid fire for the follow up, which could be especially nice if you destroy a bunch of cover. Or you commit to the I'm just a shooter boy road here and pick up Rupture, so you can not only shred but also rupture enemies for the rest of the squad to take advantage of that, and also have Implacable, since you constantly be killing stuff with rapid fire, then you can reposition based on that. So it's a little bit of a mix and match, I think, in my opinion. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the Rupture perk in general on most soldiers, so that doesn't seem to be the strongest pick to me, and rockets are always a little bit iffy. If you don't have fire in the hole, then the whole accuracy is questionable, but I think, dipping into the fire side is probably my preferred idea on the shooter, because, like, especially Incinerator is such a big upgrade for your Flamethrower that is really hard to pass up. And then, of course, then in the end here, whatever kind of fun perk you wanna end up with. All right, that's the new rapid fire technical, and let's head over to the wiki and consider what options are there to make either of the free specs shine even more. As usual, we're going to start with looking for perks that would really change the way you spec your soldier, or maybe even say, okay, I wanted to go Flamer, but I want to go Rocket now. That being said, though, the soldier stats are probably still going to be a big factor. If you have your 57 aim rookie, you're not going to turn them into a Shooty technical just because they have hit and run in the XCOM role. That's gonna be really rough, probably. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So for the rocket technical, the big one here I would say is this Shredder rocket. For 20 AP, this is steel. This is a really good rocket. I'm not sure how you might have to pause and zoom in, or just open the wiki yourself. So it's a rocket attack that deals 3 to 5 points of damage depending on the tier of your rocket launcher. It applies up to 3 points of rupture, so with the beam gauntlet, it's 3 points of rupture to all targets in the AoE. Oh, hang on, and it shreds from 3 to 5 points of armor, then it applies Rupture. It does a little bit of damage, does decent amount of environmental damage, so destroying some cover. Now, the text here says the rocket has the same area of effect as a frag grenade, which would be a 3x3 tile area, right, which is a regular frag grenade. The 1.2 patch notes for the Shredder rocket say it has a 3 tile radius. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to confirm one way or the other which one is the accurate way. But either way, even with a tiny radius, right? This is super strong, especially for the shred AoE shred effect. That is really good. Yeah, the shred and rupture effect mostly. Like this might be even better for a big group of mechs than an EMP rocket. Might be. It's a close call. It's a close call. Why don't you just pick up salvo and fire both rockets at them? Now, next up on the list, also for rocket technical friend, Bring 'em On. This would then probably, if I see Bring 'em On and I'm building a rocket technical anyway, I might definitely give them biggest booms, because now we're talking about some serious damage increase on the critical hits for your rockets. Now, since we're talking about critical hits, worth noting that no aggression will not increase your chance to land a critical hit with your rockets. The rockets and grenades critical hit chance is capped at 50%, and nothing you do will increase or reduce it. Alright, one other great rocket perk here is Shockwave. We've seen that on the Grenadier. Yeah, you're damaging grenades and gauntlet rockets. Decrease enemy defense by 15 and dodge by 20. That is fantastic. Keep in mind, I'm fairly certain when it says gauntlet rockets, it might only apply to your default rockets and not to your like Shredder, EMP, Concussion. I don't think they count as gauntlet rockets, but I'm actually not 100% sure. I couldn't find confirmation on this one way or the other. So if you know 100% for sure, guaranteed which way it works, please let us know in the comments. Either way, even if it only works on your default rockets, that's still a good perk. Although, keep in mind, you know, rockets have really good cover destruction, and maybe if you blew up their high cover, you don't need the defense reduction anymore. But it's still going to be super useful if you just rocket like a gatekeeper or something to shred their armor, and then you also reduce their defense and dodge. It can be really helpful. Other good rocket perks. Needle grenades applies also to rockets. Your explosives do not destroy loot. +1 damage on unarmored enemies. Solid pick. 20 AP, a little bit pricey, but hey, if you didn't roll Shredder rocket and you still want to build a rocket technical, then you know this might pay off. This might pay off for the extra damage and of course for the extra loot that you otherwise wouldn't get. Now, as a bit of a word of warning, some perks here affect grenades, some affect rockets, some affect both. Pay close attention to the tooltips, because you know we have needle grenades, and it explicitly says explosives do not destroy loot, so that should apply to rockets and grenades. Then we have tandem heat warheads, which, you know, it's not tandem heat grenades, it's warheads, but then the text says your grenades. So this, as far as if you go by the wording, and this is what I'm going by, this does not affect your rockets. Similar than here, volatile mix, grenade area effect is increased by 1 time. That all being said, you have a lot of perks which kind of benefit both a little bit. Biggest booms, salvo. So if you wanna build a rocket technical that can also throw grenades when they're out of rockets, and potentially, you know, carry around some grenades, potentially get airdrop grenades from your specialist, then the XCOM Rogue can give you a bunch of perks here to improve that, right? Starting with full kit, volatile mix, bombardier, bring them on with biggest booms, needle grenades, of course, and I guess tandem heat. Keep in mind though, a lot of these perks are in the same row. You're not gonna get both of them, but this might just influence then your choices for equipment, and then also make salvo a better pick, since, you know, if you're carrying a bunch of grenades, you have an additional item that benefits from that. Now, our flamer technical friends are a little bit on the shit list here. There's really not much that makes the flamer better. Maybe the flamer doesn't need it. I think the biggest pick for flamer technical would be dedication, although this is also a great perk for our shooting technicals. You know, some extra mobility to get in range, to get that flamethrower on target. Other than that though, not really much. You of course have your pistol row, so pistol perks might be great for flamer technical. Or, you know, picking up some shooty perks that help you out when you're shooting when you're out of flamer charges. Or maybe just some defensive perks, because you're often after the flamethrower in a slightly exposed, maybe forward position, and then having something like Fortify just to keep you a little bit safer on that turn where you flamethrower is not the worst. Thinking about something like Resilience, maybe, to give you additional crit resistance, or low profile, so because very often you will do your flamethrower attacks from a low cover position. That just to, you know, it is flamethrower technical is a dangerous profession, and yeah, keeping yourself alive is usually. I'm a big fan of offensive XCOM row perks, but especially for technical, I can see some use cases for the more defensive perks here. Rapid fire shooting technicals. There's a lot of options here. Oh well, I also, you know, of course, I think whenever it's shown up in the XCOM row, MAME, any technical, it's a great utility to have. It's great against berserkers, chrysalids, etc., etc. I've said it 1,000 times. It's a really nice perk to pick up if you have sufficient aim to actually make the hit. So anyway, shooting technicals. A lot of things here in the tier 4 row. You know, close encounters if you have the mobility supporters, or you can do more a hidden run rifle kind of approach. Hunter's Instincts would also then combine with that, though that's a lot of points to invest. Double tap, giving you an additional attack so you can shoot and then rapid fire, 3 attacks per turn. Really strong upgrade in case of shootage, number of shots you sent down on target. Lethal, of course, big damage increase. This is like pretty much whatever you roll here, not you, is going to be a decent upgrade for the shooter or for the rocketeer. Precision shot, I'd say, is a little bit of a trap, since, yeah, I mean, at least for the shooter technical, you have rapid fire. That's probably gonna do more damage if both shots hit than a precision shot. So probably not worth 30 AP. And then you have like your passives making all your shots better, like Stiletto or Anatomy. Although Anatomy is, you know, PS2 armor and 15 crit, or PS3 armor. I think I'd take the 15 crit any day of the week. But it's not like both options, you know, you like only get offered one or the other. And yeah, and I mean, if you're going for a shotgun rapid fire technical, then hey, picking a slug shot to have a little bit of a ranged option is not a bad choice here. Getting some more crit chance for your weapon shots might also be quite nice. One other perk worth mentioning, which is kind of new, is Shell Shock here. Grenades and rockets decrease enemy aim by 10 and critical chance by 15. So it basically gives your offensive grenades and rockets a little bit of a half a flashbang effect. I don't think that's enough of an effect to make it really great. To be fair, it's only 15 AP. It's, you know, I mean, it stacks, you know. You could, of course, throw a rocket or grenade at a bunch of enemies and then follow it up with a flashbang, and then you have the aim reduced by 30. It's an additional way to debuff enemies, I guess, which can be nice. Can be nice. I'm not, you know, it's often, it's really hard to judge XCOM row perks just on paper, because it always depends what your combat intelligence is. How many AP does your soldier actually have? What other perks did they roll? What base stats did they roll? You know, there's like double tap is fantastic unless you have the 56 base aim squaddy technical that you want to turn into a flamer anyway, then you're not going to pick up double tap. So it's always situational. I think it's the most important idea is here that you get a general idea which perks are really strong and useful and to look out for, and if they apply to your specific situation. That being said, we are through with the 8 base classes. We're going to move on to the heroes, to the sparks, to the psyops, and to some other guys covering other topics. If there's any topic in Long War of the Chosen, especially in 1.2, that you would like me to discuss, leave your suggestions here or throw them into the Discord. I want to do way more guide videos so that every situation is covered. For now, I'm going to put a cut in here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.